Hey guys, welcome back to another Q&A. It is December 29th, 2021. So this is going to be the last Q&A of the year. All right. Contest prep peaking. When to know if you need carbs or fats to load and how to apply either. Well, that is a really loaded question. So there's a lot of variables that would go into that, but generally I'll give you some general stuff that I could say. I generally use both. A situation that I may not use both would be perhaps if the diet's really heavy in one macronutrient or the other, so maybe I don't need to load both, but I generally do use both. It could be either order. Sometimes I use fats first and then carbohydrate, or vice versa, but I do generally use both. I couldn't really tell you when to. That would be a really large, that's probably like its whole video in and of itself. But the person asking, we will cover that. So do not worry. But I've done some podcasts on peaking, so you can always check those out as well. Is giving blood the only solution for individuals on TRT to control hematocrit and other RBC markers? Answer this on the IG live last night, but in the person asking it's the same person that asked it there, but I want to cover that, so it's on here as well. Telmisartan helps. Fruit flow from Swanson might help. Also, making sure iron is in a good spot in the diet. A lot of people, especially males, overconsume iron. Females, not so much. More in females, I'm getting a lot more low iron issues in females. But in males, definitely making sure that you're not over-consuming iron. It's very easy to do when you're eating a lot of animal proteins, okay? So be careful with that. And then beyond that, those are really the main things. And I would also just add that raised RBC counts directly caused by testosterone replacement don't really seem to be any type of risk factor. We talked about this on the risk prevention podcast. It was with Dr. Scott Howell, and you can find that in OPD. Go to my link tree. You can search all the OPD podcasts. So the question would be like, is it something that you need to worry about? Now, in extreme, sure, if the blood's like pure sludge, then yeah, you might need a little like reset there. But what we see sometimes is that by donating frequently, that there's more of a rebound effect and that the values actually end up coming up higher. Okay. So I don't donate. I can't tell you the last time I donated other than when I get blood work done, I guess. If it's like a therapeutic phlebotomy where it's prescribed and they're taking larger amounts, then maybe, but other than that, don't really donate. My RBCs and hematocrit's actually better now that I don't donate. I used to donate, but it actually stays a lot lower now. It's almost never out of range. Take that for what it's worth. But yeah, those are some things to consider. Increasing appetite for someone who hasn't reached body fat levels that call for a mini cut. So I'm assuming like they're towards the top of like their caloric, what they can kind of handle appetite wise, but they still need to keep going. I'm all too familiar. Main things like food selection, not only within each meal, but also like where you time food, using bigger intra-workout shakes, things like that, like places that you can get calories in there, like liquid, powder, things like that. Now, are we relying on that? No, but when you're eating these massive amounts of calories, supplementing with things is not, you're not really risking nutrient deficiency or missing out on whole food nutrition because you're eating so much food. I would much rather see someone eat, like use some like carbolin and whey isolate and some oils and things like that for fats and stuff to get these calories in combination with whole foods rather than just trying to cram down like all rice and potatoes, because you're just going to wreck your digestion. It doesn't make sense to do it. You're literally going to wreck the digestion. You're not going to absorb the nutrients. So it's kind of a waste. You're not getting any benefit from whole food in that case. Intra-workouts, using things like I use like some 100% fruit juice in a couple places. Like I'm not hammering a bunch of fructose, but I'll use a little bit in there. Supplementing meals with carb powders and things. Like if I'm eating 100 grams of carbs from like a rice product or something, then and like 100 grams of carbs from like a powder, I get 200 grams of carbs in a meal. Yeah, it's huge, but like you can put away some food that way, right? A really good reference to would be go back and look at on my YouTube channel, look at the a day of eating, where I actually went through like one of my really high calorie phases and explained exactly what I was eating and why and how it worked out, and and food selection, all that stuff. It's going to look a little weird. I have plenty of whole foods and nutrition and stuff in the plan, but I also have some of these items that I'm talking about. So go back and check that out on my YouTube channel, and you might pick up some actual, like, what I was doing in there. Definitely will not look typical, but it worked. Okay. Accuracy of food sensitivity tests. Spelt was high on mine. Not sure what I should eliminate. Accuracy is not great on them. They're normally IgA or IgG type testing. It's not very good. Is it 100% inaccurate? Not necessarily. I mean, it might tell you something. You could always look at it and say, like, well, we can try this, and if it helps, then great. If it doesn't, then that's also fine. But in general, no, they're not that accurate. But process of elimination is accurate. That's the most accurate way to, assess food intolerances. Really, is just try it, see what happens, and then from there. But I never use them. I don't ever use food sensitivity testing. You could also make the assumption that, and I made a post about this a little while ago, that if you have a lot of food sensitivities, or you seem to, then you probably have some kind of underlying GI issue. Like if I'm seeing someone, they're popping up and they're having like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, like all these food sensitivities, then I'm like, okay, well, we probably have an underlying GI issue. We fix that, and then voila, they can eat these foods again. The typical things like dairy and stuff like that, lactose intolerance, like I get that relatively common, but like, well, I can't eat chicken, I can't eat potatoes, I can't eat any of these nightshades, I can't eat all this stuff, and it's like 15 things. I'm like, all right, well, we probably have either you have some really bad genetics for allergies, or we have another histamine issue or something, which is probably caused by the gut. So we go back and look at that. Couple more. Any experience with using ephedrine, the over-the-counter one, at 25 milligrams while dieting? What are the benefits and drawbacks? It is not over-the-counter anymore. Well, sort of. Broncaid and Primatine, I think that's how you say it. I might be wrong. Those have ephedrine HCl and ephedrine sulfate, I think, are the two types. One has a little bit higher yield than the other, but for the sake of this, those are there. And the benefits and drawbacks, well, they act on beta receptors, so much like caffeine, much like clenbuterol. Yeah, I mean, they can work. It's going to give you some fat loss benefit. I mean, are we talking, if we're talking like BMR and stuff, what are we talking? Percent or 2? I mean, it's not much. You can look at the research, but it's not a lot. Pretty good for appetite suppression, pretty good for energy. I think that's probably why they were so popular, is really just because it allowed people to just eat less because they weren't as hungry and they had more energy and they could do more cardio and train and all that stuff. They work in terms of the like dopaminergic effect and the actual like euphoric type. Yeah, it's a good stimulant, but like anything else, used too much for too long, and of course systemic stress could potentially outweigh the benefit that you get from it. It could be used. It could, but like I have not really used it with anyone in quite a while. Used to be over the counter, like you get it in the actual fat loss, like actual like fat loss supplements, but it's an option. Again, just weigh out like what's the stress input, what's the benefit, right? In your experience, what have you seen as the best method for naturally repairing leaky gut? Clearly, this could be a monster topic in its own, but maybe some general guidelines. Leaky gut, well, we're really trying to slow down that intestinal permeability. So if you're like things like a lot of gluten intake, that would be a case where gluten probably needs to be monitored or eliminated because it does seem to raise zonulin levels, which will increase permeability. Beyond that, like food-wise, just don't eat things that irritate your gut. I don't like to use the word low inflammatory diet because it's not really a good term, but it kind of is. Also, supplement-wise, your big hitters here are going to be glutamine, zinc carnosine, and probably you can add aloe to that list. Glutamine and zinc carnosine especially will help with that enteric nervous system, help with the actual mucosal lining and mucosal production in the gut, and really help seal up those junctures, right? So those are the big ones. we're talking, you could, talking like 20, 30, 40 grams of glutamine a day split up into multiple dosage. Zinc carnosine's right around 70, 75 milligrams ish, a couple times a day. Normally comes in, like I generally have people use like Pepsin GI. And then aloe. Aloe is just kind of it's more of a soothing agent, but it's also been shown in a couple instances of potentially lower antibody activity. So what's that mean? Well, it means it's probably going to lower inflammation in the GI tract. So that's an option as well. There's a bunch of brands, but I normally use the Lily of the Desert brand just because it's so easily accessible and you can get it anywhere, pretty much online at the store, so we use that. And there will be sugar-free options or like sugar-added options. Probably not going to use the sugar-added options. So those are the biggest things. And of course, stress is always one, with any GI issue, because that nervous system communication there, and also what that stress is going to do to motility. So, you don't want motility to be super slow and you have a bunch of stuff literally sitting in there and basically like fermenting and just causing a bunch of additional inflammation. So hopefully that is helpful. I hope everyone has a great new year, and I will talk to you all next time.